All right. Welcome to Operation End Times. I'm your Jedi Warrior for Jesus, Bent Hellestead. This is actually take 4. So I'm just hoping it all works because I'm getting tired of doing this. You know, the first time you kind of say something is always the best time. But that being said, let's hope the 4th time is the best. Anyway, the last 4 videos, I've been talking about Job, the end time man, and the things that he's experiencing, and the wilderness. Today, I want to kind of set Job aside for a minute and take a moment to explore and understand the wilderness better. You know, the question that is in my mind is, what is the wilderness? Why do we got to go into it? What are we doing there, and how do we get out of it? So for the last, couple of weeks, I've been researching, seeking the truth, trying to understand the wilderness. With Exodus 2012 looming, understanding the wilderness, being prepared for the wilderness is crucial. So anyway, I was looking in the Bible, and what you find is the wilderness is all through the Bible. Everybody in the Bible deals with the wilderness. It's right there in the beginning in Genesis. The children of Israel got called out, kicked out of Egypt into the wilderness. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness and was tempted by the devil. John the Baptist was a voice crying out in the wilderness. And, most of the old-time prophets spent time in the wilderness, being protected or getting in touch with God. Moses, an interesting story in Exodus when he's talking to the Pharaoh about releasing the children of Israel. Pharaoh says, hey, Moses, you know what? Go say a prayer to your God and sacrifice to your God for me. And Moses basically says, yeah, I'll do that, but I'm not going to sacrifice to my God here in Egypt using the stuff that you guys use for your false religions and whatnot. But I'm going to go into the wilderness, and there I'll pray to my God and offer up a sacrifice. So time and time again, the wilderness is brought up and used in the Bible as a place. God tells us in Exodus that he takes us out into the wilderness to test us, for us to prove our worthiness. And we meet God in the wilderness, kind of like Moses talking to God at the burning bush. The other place, is if you just look up in the skies at night, the stars, the heavens, you'll find the wilderness too. The zodiac. People doing horoscopes, they talk about the wilderness, all the time. I was reading a lot of that stuff on the internet, and it doesn't matter what your sign is, it's always saying into the wilderness for this or into the wilderness for that. But the zodiac, the constellations, Scorpio is a sign of the wilderness. And what do you find in the wilderness? Scorpions. Another sign of the wilderness is Cancer. Cancer, like Scorpio, are 2 of the darkest constellations, and darkness is kind of associated with the wilderness. Aquarius, we're going into the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, uses the symbol of the maiden with the long hair and water, and a lot of people tie that into John the Baptist and the wilderness. So, the stars, the zodiac, the wilderness is front and center as well. And going into the age of Aquarius, there's kind of like a going into the wilderness as part of the transformation of going from the age of darkness to the age of light. So anyway, as I researched all of this, a picture of the wilderness started forming, and basically what we got to do is go back to the beginning, way back to Genesis when God created the earth. He took him 6 days, and when he was all done, basically, I believe this is basically how it looked, where what God created was he was the center of the world, and then there was us, human beings, in the garden. So God was the center of the world. We were living in a protected, a walled-in, a hedged environment known as the Garden of Eden. And, it was great because we had nothing to prove. We were already in there. There was no threats. There was no troubles. In the Garden of Eden, we basically had everything that we needed. We were content. Life was perfect. And outside of the garden was the rest of the world, the wilderness, dangers, troubles, the beasts of the fields. But we didn't have to worry about any of that because we were inside the garden and life was good. But as we know, humans, we messed up. Even though we had everything, we basically thought we were fooled into thinking that, hey, we needed more, that we needed to be God ourselves. And that was kind of our fall. And, basically as a punishment, God kicked us out of the garden into the wilderness. And at that point, we became separated from God. The light of God into the darkness of the wilderness. And life for us changed, living outside the garden in the wilderness. Life got hard. We had to grow our own food. We had to till the soil. We had to work. We had to put shelter over our heads. We were exposed to troubles, tribulations, dangers, the beasts of the field. But over time, mankind scratched out a living, and we kind of reformed a picture of the world that basically looks like this. And the world we created, we're in the center of it. We are the center. And we built a civilization, a society, Egypt, Babylon, and the beast is part of it because we create our own laws where we say, this isn't right or that's right. But what we find is our moral standards keep lowering. But outside the city, in the rest of the world, is the wilderness. And in this world, most of us have kicked God even out of the wilderness. So God kind of lives on the outside. Like a common thought nowadays is that God is in heaven, not on earth. Whereas back in the original concept, I'm sorry about that. In the original concept, God was on earth. So we're in the center. We're exposed to threats, to troubles. We work to get things. We're always wanting more. We're discontent. We're always working to reach perfection. And a lot of us are looking for God. Even looking for proof of God. Which makes you think, if we're looking for proof of God, maybe God's looking for some kind of proof from us. And, that's where the tribulation and the end times comes in. Because you take those two worlds, those two pictures, and now at the end times, here's where we're at. The world that we're living in, where we're the center of it, Babylon, the wilderness around the city, or the original world where God was the center and we were in a protective, walled-in environment, which will be the future, which is God's kingdom here on earth, where once again, we're hedged in, where we have no troubles, there's no want, there's no shedding of tears. But where these two worlds intersect, as you can clearly see, is the wilderness. And in the wilderness, that's where good and evil confront you. And in the wilderness, that's where we're tested and have to prove our worthiness. We have to wash our robes clean. And in the end times, we got to make a choice. Are we going to go this way and take the mark of the beast? Or are we going to go this way, which is to salvation, That's a choice we all gotta make. And going back towards Babylon, that's the easy choice. And even in the Bible, the children of Israel, when they were out in the wilderness, when they had no food, no water, and life sucked, rather than turn to God, they begged to go back to Babylon, to Egypt, to the enslavement, the bondage, the life of rigor, that the Egyptians had inflicted upon them. And they didn't care that they thought that was better than having to face God in the wilderness. And in the end times, that's the choice we're going to all have, because everybody's going to be thrown out into the wilderness. We're going to either be called out or kicked out, however you want to look at it. But, the choice will be, do you want to find God and find the path and get through the wilderness to the other side, which is a much better existence, where God's in control? Or do you want to stick with the old world, which is a path to destruction? And an interesting story to me that I found was in Exodus. Moses' brother Aaron, him and his wife, God in the wilderness gave the children of Israel all the commandments and a lot of other rules to live by, and they rejected all that and walked away from God. And at one point Aaron even complained to God because Moses had married for a second time, and he had married an Ethiopian woman, and Aaron was like, well, man, we're not allowed to do that, so how come Moses gets to do whatever he wants? And he complained to God, and God got angry at Aaron, and he actually gave his wife leprosy. And later on, he cured Aaron's wife. But he got angry with Aaron, and he said, Aaron, you know what? Moses isn't like you. Moses has gone into the wilderness and talked to me face to face. No mystery stuff. Face to face, where there's no misunderstanding. So whatever Moses does is between me and him. And who are you to come between that? So I'm just making the point. What we're doing in the wilderness this next time is not the old covenant of the commandments and all the, hundreds of rules that the nation of Israel had to live by. But it's the new covenant, which, Jesus laid the groundworks for it, which is just love your brother as you love yourself and love your God. Make him the center of your life. And, in order to do that, we're going to have to let go of the old world, of the things of Babylon, to move forward into a better life, a more positive life, and let go of the old ways, the unsustainable, corrupt ways that are leaving a negative input and are a path to destruction. So anyway, I'm going to cut it off there. This is Ben Helsted, your Jedi Warrior for Jesus, just taking a closer look at the wilderness, exploring the wilderness. This is Operation End Times. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in. We're here to discuss things. But the time to prepare, both mentally and physically, for the wilderness is now. Because it's not going to be easy. It's putting your total dependency in God. Are you ready for that? All right. God bless. Peace out.